shake you out of your sleep like when a toddler creeps. Totality of the deep, the mere thought of an unconscious manifestation carried out with the beat. Positive charged protons creating neural explosions. Time hiccups when fingers and pads touch. Dead air smiles because it knows what's coming. The countenance of the clock claps hands. The choreography of the knock slaps jams. And you be like, who made this? Vertebrae responding to the call so bad to make a B-girl curve the wall.
Hello and welcome, everyone. Happy Sunday. Welcome to Beautifully Uncomfortable. This is a talk show that brings a new level of awareness to difficult or confusing topics, however uncomfortable it may be to listen to, watch, share, and or engage. Our hope here is that a beautiful understanding will emerge for the panel members as well as the viewers. Ain't that beautiful? This show is developed and produced by Words, Beats, and Life in partnership with DJ RBI. And just want to say, as before we begin, that the views, thoughts, and opinions expressed during today's show are the panelists' own and don't represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of Words, Beats, and Life, its staff, board, or funders. The purpose, again, of Beautifully Uncomfortable is to surface and excavate topics that provoke difficult conversation and discourse with respect and sensitivity. The Words, Beats, and Life name and all forms and abbreviations are the property of its owner, and its use do not imply endorsement or opposition to any specific person, organization, product, or service. So with that said, I wanted to bring in a bevy of panelists that are from among our creative ecosystem from across the country right now, from East and West Coast, a number of creatives that have been working in the space for a long time, artists, aspiring artists, collective sort of brilliance, I like to say, who are sort of defining systems that demonstrate positive change, which is very much a mantra of Words, Beats, and Life. So let's bring in our panelists, and I'll go around and let them introduce themselves. I think they can do that better than I can. Let's start first with Wes Felton. Wes, can you introduce yourself and a quick moment about yourself?
Hey, how you doing? My name is Wes Felton. I'm a DC native and a professional artist. I've been a writer for the last 30 years of my life. And am I muted?
No.
Am I good? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I've been writing for the last 30 years, and I guess I'm here because Kanye West has been someone who I've written material about like over 15 years ago, or at least maybe 18 years ago, I think. And so, just I've always kind of viewed him with more of a critical view, I guess, which is kind of now the norm in 2022.
Yes, thank you so much for joining. I'm so interested to hear your perspective and much of what the world is coming around to and evolving in consciousness, that you've been, as we talked about, a little bit of a foresight in that. Chakra Ashram, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Chakra Ashram, part of the Amphibians Collective. Been somewhat consistently doing music and actually doing different forms of multimedia for the past couple of years. Yeah.
Yes. And also one of my mentors, I have to say. So this is pretty exciting for
I
me.
just want to throw that in there. I don't like talking about myself if you don't know, brother. If
And
you know
I'm sure
me,
that mentor to very many in the community, but I'm one of those benefited from that pleasure. Sometimes V, let's get to you and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Paris. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you so much for inviting me out. I am sometimes V. I go by she, her pronouns. I'm kind of a bucket of things, so I'll try to keep it short and concise about all the things that I do. First and foremost, I am a podcast host myself. I am the host and founder of Don't Cast and Drive, a podcast that is an exclusive stories on diverse takes on local and not so local artists. And I'm also the founder and host for Lady Blurred Sings the Blues, a podcast that I share the space with Paris the Testament. It is a quirky discussion panel that navigates the nerd world through sexual health, mental health, and other healths that may rise above. And it stars Kylie Too Smart, who has been part of the show before, Paris the Testament, and myself. I'm also a nonprofit professional. I'm currently with the organization called Center for Excellence in Nonprofits. Our mission is to create a sustainable culture through leaders, as well as making sure that they are navigating the nonprofit world through an ideal lens, which ideal stands for inclusion, diversity, equity, access, and liberation. And the artist side of me is a trombonist. As you can see in the back there, I am a bass trombonist, primarily with 7th Street Big Band. We are a big band that is conceived from East Side San Jose in the South Bay area of California. And that is led by a drummer named Gabby Horlick. So thank you so much for having me here.
Thank
and
you
I
so
will
much.
pass the torch.
Yes, thank you so much for encapsulating all of that breadth of your background in a short summary. So I'm so honored to have you here. The Rap Nerd, let's get into your background and share a little bit about your intro.
Okay. Well, born in West Philadelphia, born and raised. No, I'm joking. Long resume. But no, I'm the Rap Nerd. I am a Bay Area hip hop artist and also hip hop educator, producer, Pro Tools certified. Been working with youth now for almost about 8 years. I've also been touring and traveling. I took the past few years ever since the whole pandemic to kind of focus more on me and raise up my own vibration and consciousness. And now coming back with the wonderful vengeance with founding Bayokio, which is the first hip hop meets anime event planning, and just really creating a safe space for everyone to finally be an artist and be nerds. So, but yeah, I'm here definitely today and to enjoy this conversation and to vibe with everybody. So yeah, that's just a small recap of my dossier.
Yes, I think everyone here has done that. Such a breadth of experience, and over 30, as Wes said, 30 years plus between him and Patrick and Chakra. I don't know. It's probably 60 years plus of you collectively, and parental lineage and everything else. So let's get on you.
Can we feel?
Oh, wait. I cut someone off.
Old as shit.
Oh.
Dialect PG Poets, our poetry director at WBL, is muted right now. I can't hear you.
Oh, can you back? 1 2 1 2. Can you hear me?
Yes.
No,
I can hear you now. Yes.
All right. My apologies. I was all that talk of numbers is making me feel, but I'm very happy. Yeah. I'm Patrick A. Black Picasso of the Poem Seer Artist. I obtained my street school of hard knocks. I'm currently second act, so to speak, as poetry director for Words, Beats, and Life. Here, Kanye has an inspiration for a long time. Not that bad now, so let's go.
Yes, you were cutting out a bit there, but I think maybe we can get it coordinated and together. Sound, and it's a number of us on today, so I hope everyone in the audience will be a little bit patient with us as we sort of work through this. But yes, tech gremlins do attack when less interested. But I want to sort of open up the show today. Rather than framing this specifically, I think everyone probably knows, I don't like to give additional platform to Kanye or Ye specifically, but more so around the implications and sort of ramifications of what the experience that we're in now, sort of post Ye's anti-Semitic and remarks and additionally, sort of self-hatred remarks and a number of other things that has been happening, far-right conspiracies that have been spewed. I wanted to sort of talk a little bit about, as a first option, around has this been something that has happened before? I feel like this has been very much attributed, people going far right, being disenfranchised with the system. This isn't the first person that sort of Ye isn't the first person that's experienced this pathway, being problematic, sort of really bold and hatred spewed. We've seen this before. And I wanted to sort of get an idea from everyone here. It's not the first person or the last person that's going to deliver controversial commentary. But in terms of that, where do we as a community sort of fall in terms of responsibility? We've seen it before. Why have we seen it? Why were we not able to recognize that before? I think I would love to start with Wes Felton, because I want to sort of get a sense of like, this is not something that's been new, right? We know Kanye's been sort of far right for a while, and has been sort of identifying with mainstream right-wing American figures in American politics for a long time. And how did it get here? Where did we kind of miss the framing around what's happening? So Wes, can you tell us, because it seems like you were always aware that this was the trajectory.
Well, for me, I've always just come from the perspective of, there's this concept that was created for people of color, like back on the plantations, where we have this, we've been conditioned to wait for this like individual savior or individual to come and like save us. Like he's going to wave his arm and everything, all the suffering and the history and the pain of the world is going to just go away, right? And so I noticed that back in the day, when Kanye West first came out, people were immediately like, they thrusted that upon him. Like people call him, oh, he's coming, he's the savior of hip hop. He's going to be the bridge that bridges the gap between the new school and the old school. All of these things that, he had thrust upon him immediately. But in that process, I more specifically addressed the things that inconsistencies that I saw immediately. Okay, you come in the name of Jesus, but yet, the Jesus pieces that you wear are full of diamonds that are consequences of blood diamonds. And, we want to talk about, even in the conversation of, with his recent, I guess, attacks upon Jewish people, even that conversation, I even raised that conversation of, who are you purchasing the jewels from? And, what are the consequences of that? There was even situations where, because of Jesus Walks, he was able to finesse a couple of shows at a couple churches. And there was one instance where here at a local church, he had a youth choir, learn all his stuff. And then he showed up like 3 hours late. He didn't come to sound check. And then upon him returning, the young people, he told them, well, I'm not going to use you guys now. I'm going to use my dad. And so it's kind of like I was just kind of more of like reaching out as like almost like a letter from Malcolm to Martin at that time. Because at that time I was also, it was a very high point in my career as an artist, where I was, touring consistently. And in DC, I was, opening up for a lot of the, global artists that would come and perform. But what I will tell you is that, when I did that song back then, I caught a lot of slack. You know, I got blacklisted by a lot of people in the industry. A lot of promoters stopped booking me because they, you know, like the fact that I chose to challenge this, you know, idol that people were kind of doing. So I feel that we all contributed to the Kanye that we see now, because we, you know, sometimes we don't hold artists accountable because we feel, well, there's a lack of something, so we'll settle for what we have. You know, I call it the Lauryn Hill syndrome, because people miss Lauryn Hill so much, they just accept anything Lauryn Hill does now, or anything remotely, you know, resembles those kind of feelings, you know. And I just like to remind people that sometimes those things aren't sincere, because this is still this is the music industry. It's a music business. So just like any business, you got doctors who want to save lives, and you got doctors who want to make millions of dollars. So the same thing applies in the music business. And I just identify Kanye always as a capitalist first and foremost. So
Wow, that I want to give folks an opportunity to respond to that, only because I very much sort of agree with the framing here. I feel like we didn't miss this, that it was in front of us very much the entire time. We watched a lot of things happen, and without addressing it, there's been countless numbers. I've struggled as a person, I think, just without even being an artist in the community, just sort of thinking as a person about what is sort of, how do you utilize art as a vehicle for dialogue and social change and community healing? Much of what I feel like the voice of all of you as creators have very much done. Anyone want to add on to what Wes Felton sort of said in terms of, as a community, did we miss the mark? Was this sort of, I don't think it was happening shrouded away from mass media. What happened in terms of how it got here? Does anyone else want to comment on that?
I might have a small comment to kind of tack on to what Wes was saying. So yeah, I know I picked up what you were mentioning about saviorism with people, and like how they have managed to climb their way to even receiving that mantle. But a lot of what saviorism that I feel is like, was it, this might be playing a little bit on devil's advocate, and I would love for anybody to chime in, is like, why did we give him the mantle? Is it because of his success? Is it because of his artistry? Is it because he was bold? I mean, we all remember back when, believe it was like 2005, when he was like on screen about George W. Bush not giving too much of a care for Black folk. So what qualified him to be put up on this mantle where we saw him as somebody, as a possible leader, somebody that we should be taking influence from, to somebody who then started to show it in his concerts, with even having that platform to make it look like he is the man of God, or the God himself. So I am curious to see like what, and to kind of dive in, like what led up to this part of him.
That's a great question to surface. I saw that Artemis, shout out to Artemis, who wasn't able to be here today, but did mention he used the backpacker movement, in his words, and I say that loosely, for gaining momentum, and then sort of dismissed it. And I think he's talking about his early Chicago days and influences, working with sort of No ID and a number of other producers that he was working with at the time, and then sort of left them behind. I've not fully digested the documentary that shows a lot of that background. But what I think that's a great question to surface, V, around like, what is, we have a podcast on Words, Beats, and Life that we talk about leadership called No New Leaders, KNOW New Leaders. Because one of the things I think that's trying to surface in those conversations is what actually is leadership, and what is it to be a follower? What is it to be? What is it to have a fellowship and among each other? I think the idea, and I see Mark Cooper, shout out to Mark Cooper, saying clout is contagious. In the boom of the internet, I think there's also a part of, for me at least personally, I've seen a lot of the self-identity of finding Kanye as an intersectionality in the hip hop space, because oftentimes very much people felt sort of misaligned with hip hop in the way that they were seeing it in a mainstream sense. So it was, I don't fit in the archetype that was a mainstream archetype. And then, the backpack movement, if that's what we want to call that, was very much at some point an identity source for so many people, including myself. I mean, I very much oriented to that space. But I wonder if there was, people were feeling like Kanye came on the scene and it was an identity structure or some archetype that I can connect to. It was an artsy sort of, a thinker, someone who brought new perspective to hip hop, who was bold and courageous about their genius and about their abilities. Anyone want to sort of tackle on to what V is saying around like who chose Ye as being an archetype for a leader and why?
Oh, I was about to say something. I was just going to say, I think it's a part of it also is that I think he represented like the underdog, and people like seeing the underdog kind of win, because if you look at his position of what he was to Rockefeller, they didn't take him seriously as an MC, right? And you just saw him kind of rise up to the point where he was going head to head with 50, who was at the top at the time, and Kanye surpassed him. And even to the point where Jay-Z started kind of following his lead. So I think people kind of were supporting that, I guess his artistry and the fact that he can believe in something and kind of live up to it. And even, the whole thing with the sneakers and everything he's done with fashion, it's that he says he's going to do something, he actually does it. And people love, seeing somebody say they're going to do something and actually follow through,
Yeah.
On a surface level.
Yes, we can hear you perfectly, Patrick.
Okay. Yeah. I'll jump on that and say, who made him a leader? I think we did, back in the day, most said, whatever's happening with hip hop is happening with the people, and that's he is literally our mirror, I think he exposes a lot of our own faults and dichotomies as a country, particularly now, like when a sizable amount of the population consider him a thought leader in some weird way, it's but yeah, I mean, obviously, we love the idea of genius, and we hold it up, and we all aspire to it in some form or fashion, but there needs to be a point where we leave it for what it is, you know what I mean? But America, we love celebrity so much and create this personality cult behind people. That's how we had Trump, right? And then that emboldened him to think, I can do that. I can do this too. And actually thought he was going to, snatch the crown, but yeah, that's my 2 cents.
I mean, I would like to also say, also prior to Trump, also Obama. I mean, we saw how, he might as well have been Jesus, the way he was, he was kind of put on a pedestal. I mean,
we're even witnessing it with Deion Sanders currently.
Oh yeah,
where here somebody just wants to upgrade their job position, and somehow now they felt like an entire community, but this same community was the community that broke into his car 20 times while he was coaching there, broke into his son's car 20 something times. Water, they had to take baths in swimming pools at one point. And so it's the ideas that often we as Black folk, because we get caught up into this like savior mentality, this one entity thing, we forget that there's powers in numbers. And what happens is, rather than us investing in Blackness or investing in Black people, we always end up getting stuck, like, making these like false idols like richer and richer to ultimately do nothing to contribute to the community that they claim that they're being representatives of. And I think that we we play a major part in that. You know what I'm saying? Like but it's not our fault 100% because this comes from a history of conditioning of people, who were taught to, that structure on the plantation, from the
Yep.
field all the way across to the house, because it was more than just field Negroes and house Negroes. There was a bunch of Negroes in between both of those spaces that made up the multiple types of personalities in our community that was structured and set up to divide us. And again, I see Kanye again as like, a capitalist. I think black folks, we often get caught up in the emotions of topics and we forget about the agendas. And that's how like a person like Kanye West and Donald Trump and Nazis and so, they all have the same agenda of white supremacy. Ultimately, that's their agenda. But it comes in different forms, shapes, sizes, and colors. And in order for white supremacy to perpetuate, you have to have black people who play on the side of white supremacy as well. It's not just because of white people that white supremacy is still a thing. Our people contribute to it as well, but it often comes in the form of an agenda and not necessarily in the form of like an idea or, some passionate thing that we all kind of agree with.
Yes. I want to surface a paper I had to read around the Moses complex and the crisis, kind of linking the crisis of African American leadership around sort of using discourse analysis to talk about the Black political agenda and sort of post-emancipation era to really connect, I think, like the historiography of what happened with Moses and biblical sort of political agenda and political organizing and how that was done and sort of leading a mass-based movement in a group form as a means of like how we identify for African American liberation that there is the need, right? Moses being a leader who emerged among the oppressed Hebrews to free them from oppression from the Egyptian sort of regime, but that there takes to be someone who's not alienated from the constituents, but at the same time able to transfer over into that other side of the community to speak on people's behalf. And I think that what's the responsibility? Is there a responsibility, or I heard the word accountability. I find that sometimes is a very nebulous term, because what does it mean to be accountable as an artist and as a leader? What could Kanye have done to ensure that there was accountability as he was working in the community? And from what I'm hearing a little bit from what everyone is saying is that it sounds like no one ever considered him to be accountable, just a sort of creative expert or creative, genius, or that term loosely applied. But did anyone see any elements of him being accountable as a leader?
I don't think so. I'm just going to jump in right there. I don't think there's any accountability because I think there was a lot of enabling. I feel that I like to take this metaphor kind of with Black families and Black structures, if we want to take it from that example. So I'm trying to think of like, why is this a pattern that is like a super embellished and grandiose with him, but like, what are the patterns that us as a community that we showcase? And so think about your son, who is the star of the football team, catching all the goals, making all the plays, like just getting all the right statistics to look like a star. And how much of that person's behavior is checked by their friends, checked by their fathers, their uncles, checked by teachers, coaches. I found from my experience of, and I'll use my brother as an example. He's wonderful, by the way. My brother's a wonderful person. He's great. But I feel that a lot of the nonsense I saw him doing as a kid, where he was maybe ditching class, not turning in homework, doing all this stuff, it was all excused because he was just a wonderful athlete. He was the fastest guy on the football team. He was the one who can dunk over all of his other friends in basketball. He can run the fastest in track. And everyone enabled his his poor academic behavior because he was so talented in that area. And so I think about these things kind of projecting with his father. His father was also very talented, star of the football team. I hear people in the small town talk about how great his father was in sports, but no one talks about where they tapped into being accountable by checking his toxic behaviors. And so I think about these things a lot where it's like with Kanye. Kanye wrote just wonderful, talented, just a talented musician overall, talented businessman. But how many in his immediate entourage was checking his behavior when it was first kind of molding, first developing, first happening? Who was there to humble him? Who was there to let him know, like, hey, man, that's not cool? Or even if someone did, like, was that person exiled? And so I think about like who was immediately with him. And then the moment that I learned that he married Kim Kardashian, and then that he's on the screens where all of his behavior is enabled for rates and clicks and streaming and all the above, like there was no stopping him at that point. And so I think that accountability comes with who is in your community to check you, and who is in your counsel, like your friend counsel, to the people you trust and love to death. It doesn't have to be family, but it has to be people that you care about and they care about you, to let you know that you're going wrong.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, let me say this real quick, yo. Like, and you know, you know, I'm weird about like running down my like resume and things like that, right? But there's like levels to this. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's real levels to this business and this industry called music, and a lot of times, I think based on where we are, like in our circumstance, like whether that's our you know, what level of income we're in, what level of followers we have, however you validate success or not, right? There's levels to it, and I think that if you really look at it, not just in music, but just any industry, the majority of the people who are in this country who make decisions and who have a lot of money and have wealth in this society, they're some pretty unaccountable people for the most part. You know, we see people get away with crime. We see people, you know, be overtly and outwardly racist and sexist and whatever, you know what I'm saying? And because usually 9 out of 10 of the times, if they're a wealthy person in this society, they get some kind of pass. So Kanye's not necessarily just a product of himself. He's a product of how capitalism is in the examples that we're given. You know, we say as a society, oh, we want a more peaceful society, but if you look at the music that people support and the artists that people continuously elevate and make wealthy and rich, they're not the artists who are bringing content that reflects that message that we claim that we desire. So it's important that, you know, we, as much as I get it, you know, we want to believe that Kanye is like the way he is, and we want to, you know, we'll come up with all these explanations. But the true reality of it is that Kanye is not the only person and only artist in this society who's not being held accountable for not just their words, but I'm talking about their actual art. You know, we have artists that, you know, we see these young rappers. Hey, rest in peace to all those brothers, you know, absolutely. But in the same vein, a good majority of them are worshiping gun violence and rape and, you know, the things that often they end up becoming victims of, whether they die from it or they end up in jail committing one of the crimes that they rap about. So I think it's important that the accountability really falls on the consumers and the people who support the art. If you know, it's not just like, this thing is a two-way thing. It's not just about the artist. You know, the consumers also play a part in this thing that we call arts and entertainment too,
Mm-hmm. Yes, agreed. Patrick, go ahead, and then I have a question, perhaps.
Okay, yeah. Like listening to Dub, and I was like, and he reminded me of the shirt that I had. I had that shirt that says, I miss the old Kanye, right? But because he spoke to a lot of our sensibilities early on. So are you saying that money changed him? You know what I mean? Because that struggle early on, it was a struggle that we all felt. He was a perfect storm of talent, tragedy, right? Triumph when he overcame those things. At what point did the change happen? Was
When
it
you
when
it's certain you change according to the room you walk into.
Yep.
And so if you're now entering rooms that can't relate to the struggle of a college student or the struggle of any struggle, often your environment changes. We are products of our environments. What you eat and what you consume is what you put out the most. And that's what I mean when I'm saying there's like levels to everything. You know what I'm saying? That's the difference between a legal clerk and a Supreme Court justice. Like, and everything that's in between that. Those aren't just across the street or the room next door. There's like real gaps that have been established and set up for generations. And unfortunately, in this industry, especially now with music being the way, it's not like this physical thing really anymore, where you can get albums or people can count for real what's being sold or what's being consumed. Like, it's only natural for the artists to either commit to that concept, or they kind of be left behind and remain kind of where they are. You know what I'm saying? And Kanye, to me, he was a capitalist. He was a capitalist. He let us know that he wore the Louis Vuitton book bag. So yeah, he was a backpacker, but he wasn't rocking a JanSport backpack like Black Moon and all them. He was rocking a Louis Vuitton backpack. He was wearing, you know what I'm saying? He was wearing Ferragamo slippers and rapping and things that the average person, let alone average hip hopper, ain't even thinking or checking for, let alone going to waste their money or spend their money on that type of stuff. So he let you know out the gate that this is what I identify as. This is what I want to be associated. The same way, sisters, when you that bag, when you got homegirls in your life or family members where they like, yo, I want that bag. I want that Louis Chanel. I want that this. And part of it is not necessarily because they just want the bag. It's the status and superficial aspect that comes with it, aka white supremacy, associating yourself with whiteness. It's like, because for you know what I'm saying? And so I just feel like Kanye always came out the gate like letting you know who he was. And because I call it the Lauryn Hill syndrome. Everybody we give artists a pass. We do it for so many, from J. Cole to Kendrick Lamar. We have our ways of thrusting again, that expectation on them. And I just feel like Kanye let us know who he was from out the gate. He always let us know who he was. That's all.
I think you opened up so many different pathways I would like to explore. We don't even have time you opened up a lot of gateways here, but specifically, I know I had a question on, because someone said to me sort of around like the energy and karmic debt, that what Kanye has been putting out, it seems to have inspired return on investment karmically that seems to have generated positive returns for him. And I like to sort of get into that, because I wonder, I've had this conversation with you, D, on a personal level around what energy you put out, you know, the idea of action, reaction, energy, and karmic debt, and what you're actually, that karmic debt accumulation, and what, when you're putting out something and you're actually, you know, reaping what you sow, what does that truly mean? What is, are some of the most evil people, some bad actors in our communities and cultures seem to have success? What is that about? Like, 'cause it doesn't seem like it was punitive.
Mark Cooper earlier in the chat said, because clout is contagious, when I was kind of opening up with my earlier question, I think if you don't handle clout the way that you need to handle clout, it actually turns into a disease. And that's what it is. Like, I heard you, Wes, about being a capitalist first and foremost. I think also being a capitalist is the fear of becoming irrelevant. You talked about the development of music becoming CDs, albums, vinyl to now streaming, where a lot of people who are in the game prior to streaming, they're like, oh shit, what do I need to do to make this work? So then that way I'm not getting taken over by K-pop. You know what I mean? So, so there's a fear of being irrelevant. But I also feel like, when do you feel that you've already done the work that you need to do to take a back seat? Like, I think about jazz legends all the time. I know that there's some jazz legends who've been playing their whole lives, and some jazz legends will like finally say, I did the work that I need to do, and I'm going to sit down. I'm too old. I need to spend time with my family. I need to spend time for myself. It's very rare, but it does happen. But I also feel like when people are out there trying to make more content, trying to find ways to bring attention to themselves, that's when the clout starts to manifest into a virus.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, sure, capitalism first. I got that, because you got to get your money right. You got to get that bread. But at the same time, like, how many Louis Vuitton bags do you need to have before you become tacky? So, like, that's how I kind of feel on that. So,
considering these days, I feel like the bag has now gone from intangible to tangible again, because now there's, you know, it's become a physical premise where you have West Side Gun and Rock Marcy rocking the Goyard bags, and now it has become an artifact that showcases my wealth. So I mean, the bag is now no longer this abstract thing, I'm trying to get the bag. It is now an actual physical commodity that people are showcasing, and that Wes was saying. I think
real quick, I have an anecdote about the bag. Yo, man, it's probably almost 20 years ago, we did Def Poetry Jam, right? We were up in New York shooting, and it was a mixture of poets and, you know, celebrities or uprising celebrities. Kanye was there, and he wanted to perform on stage with a Louis Vuitton suitcase. He dragged this huge suitcase on the stage, and they were like, cut, wait a minute, stop, wait, what the hell are you doing? He's like, nah, I'm the Louis Vuitton Don. He's like yelling it out. Yo, I'm the Louis Vuitton Don. I need my bag. Yo, da, da, da. They were like, yo, we can't, this license thing. There's all kinds, you can't do this. He dragged it off. He threw a tantrum and left the stage. I just want to put that out there just because it was
in the physical context of seeing that, Patrick. I know that, you know, you were there as another guest, but what happened in terms of the backstage experience? Did anyone sort of do anything?
I mean, you know, I from what I recall, you know, Uncle Rush and them, you know, like huddled around him and tried to talk him down, you know, and you know, kind of rubbed his head, you know, hey, it's okay, buddy, you know, we got you. You can still perform. And they talked him into like performing like on another day, I believe. But you know, and that's interesting that we're not mentioning mental health either, because he had to be talked down into a calm state. You know what I mean? So that's another conversation altogether.
It is, and I try to save that part of it, because I feel like taking out very much. I feel like something that I've now heard Wes say is that mental health, the decline of someone's mental health does not happen overnight. So this wasn't. This was an existing issue. This has been an existing condition that this person has been battling for years, for decades or more. And now we're making this issue, the mental health condition, to be the front stage of it seems excuse, you know, that I can act this way because the concept is that I have a mental health issue or condition. I don't know. I feel like I wanted to add. I know, Juma, it sounds like you wanted to hop in here. Indeed.
Well, I was just gonna make a comment about the whole bag thing, just real quick. I think part of it also was exclusivity, and that was part of hip hop, right? We wanted to get something that nobody else had. I mean, KRS One had you had the Dapper Dan, where it's like it's a one off. You
Mm-hmm.
can't get this, right? So that's part of it. And funny enough, he got a lot of his swag or his swagger from being in the DMV. Like I think his dad lived in Tacoma Park, and he
Yep.
came down from Chicago. That was in his documentary where the guys in Tacoma Park, like some of his friends, were like, "Nah, you can't wear those. That's not going to work." So that might have been the trigger to make him become where he is. Because we're brutal here. DMV will Joan and make you work on that.
Yeah.
Yes, archetype of fashion in DC, all of the different archetypes. I think is interesting. Is a lot of artists come and borrow. We will say that a lot of concepts and elements and infuse it, and it's no longer a secret. I mean, it's been a part of the hip hop culture from the beginning, but all cultures. I mean, whether it was jazz or R&B or soul, most of the popular breaks that you hear were created by artists that were in the city. So it is just, we are the foundation of hip hop as an underscore and the skeleton for it that, kind of sits on top of things. But I wonder, anyone to talk about that karmic issue and the energy and why has he continued to succeed in spite of putting out that energy?
I got you on that one right there. So I've been quiet for a reason, because it's why I've learned the older I get, the less I know, and true wisdom is just sitting in the back and watching. So, and everyone's saying is so true. And the reason why karma is so important, first and foremost, karma is nothing of good and evil, right and wrong, bad. All karma simply is physics. Cause and effect. That's all. That's it. Cause and effect. If you take an apple, another apple, you got two apples. So, and I'll keep it this simple, because when you understand how karma actually works, then it's about what are you intentionally doing, and are you aware of what it is you're doing? And a lot of the times we don't know what the hell we're doing. A good joke, a good parable joke I'll give you. I've been reading a lot by Sadhguru, and he talked about how the Pope one day wanted to come to New York. Always heard about New York, and he wanted to drive, because they're nice cars. So he flies and lands in New York, and he sees a limo driver, and they get inside the limo, and he says, "Sir, can I please drive? I've always wanted to drive, and I've always wanted to go on these streets." And the limo driver's like, "He's a Pope. I can't tell him no." So fine. He lets the Pope get in the driver's seat. He goes in the back. They take off, right? The limo driver's holding on for dear life because the Pope can't drive out in New York. So he's like, what if he's going to die? All of a sudden, whoop, whoop, flashing lights go off in the back. So the police car pulls him over, and he's walking up to the front of the window. Of course, limo cars, how they're all tinted, right? So rolls the window down, the cop sees the Pope. And now he's like, what in the world's going on here? Goes in the back. He sees a man in a nice suit and tie, dappered up, holding on for dear life. Even more concerned. So he calls into the station, asks for his supervisor, say, "Hey, I need help right now." And the guy's like, "What's going on?" "I don't know, how do I actually report this?" And he's like, what are you dealing with?" "There's somebody who I just pulled over, and I don't know." The guy's like, "Is it like the president?" He's like, "He's higher than the president." "Who's higher than the president?" "There's a Pope driving someone very important in the back of the car." When you look at the story, the thing is, who are you letting drive your car? Just because of their name or their status doesn't mean they're actually qualified to drive that vehicle.
Yep.
So we're letting folks, because of their status, drive us places. We're holding for dear God life, freaking the heck out. They're wondering why we get pulled over. We're in all this mess. So when you look at karma, you have to be in full control and awareness of who's leading you. And the sad thing is, no one ever gave Kanye the mantle. We did like you still don't like the Pope. Oh, he's Kanye. Let him drive. and here we are now.
That
So
yes.
It almost reminds me of that Pete Davidson thing that he said on SNL. I think it was on SNL or like a separate interview, but about how like if you're talking to a man who needs to take his medication and then he finally stops taking his medication, like everyone's like, oh, okay, whatever. But if it's a pilot, if it's someone driving the plane saying like, I'm just me, I'm off my meds, then there's something to worry
yo, I got concerns, and
Yeah.
the thing is that sadly, and this has been going on for a long, long time, and the more even I've been kind of going back and doing more Black history research because that was my minor in college. And as I get older, I'm realizing it was like after we lost a lot of our great Black thinkers and freedom fighters around the 80s because of the rise of the crack epidemic and the whole like tearing down the whole Black community, there became this thing of that either if I speak up, they're going to snipe me, or if I get money, maybe they'll finally accept me.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't want to ruffle the waters because no one wants to get got. So we just go along with the okie doke. And then when you have the whole rise of the hip hop era, the golden era, finally we're like making all this money versus owning it. We just sell it again because we don't want to ruffle the feathers. We don't want to like actually own and control stuff because we're tired of fighting. And rightfully so. We've been fighting for umpteen levels of years just to get just a smidgen of what we're starting now to see, which is Black wealth and Black excellence. But nowhere like even like what we said earlier, did we ever set up a system of accountability? And when we do set it up, I can say this from seeing it firsthand within this industry and having it done to me. The moment you get any voice of reasoning, it gets snuffed out.
Mm-hmm.
And a really good, sad story to look at is Juice WRLD. I watched that young man's documentary and I cried at the end because who killed him was his own people because no one checked him.
Yeah.
Because he had all that money, it's okay. Because he's bringing in the views, it's all right. And we always do this to Black artists.
Mm-hmm. Let
it be someone else. Oh, they're going to intervene, do all that stuff. Black folks, they love it. Even Outkast did a whole album like, and the whole world loves it when you go down, pop. We think it's a funny, cute little song. There's the actual hello, wake up here, but we don't hear that stuff. And then every time it's like a constant returning cycle. How did we get here? It's right there in front of us. So, and all karma is just like a revolving door. Until we finally get it, it's going to keep repeating itself over and over and over. You do this, you get that. You plant these seeds, you're going to reap this harvest. So it doesn't matter if it, like I said, good, bad, right, or wrong. Even wealth, it doesn't. You plant these seeds, you're going to get this. It's just that we want to be like, oh, well, there should be a fairness and justice. Life is not fair.
Right.
But life is just.
Right.
Look at nature. It will balance itself out in time.
And I'm telling y'all, the music industry is the devil's playground. And y'all have to understand that, yo. It's not, you know, I was talking to, you know, some of my students the other day, and I was explaining to them, like, you know, how, you know, and this might upset people, but, you know, I didn't like the new Black Panther. I felt that there was a lot of propaganda in it that was real subliminal.
Even the first one.
That was real. That's real, like, because I studied acting at Carnegie Mellon, and one of the first things they told us in our first acting class was that the majority of the things in the world are made up, that they're fake, and they're based off of the power of influence and individuals who learn the ability of influence and being able to say, okay, all right, how can I manipulate people, you know, to follow whatever my shit is, you know what I'm saying? We see it, and that's why I say it's not just limited to Kanye West. We have been witnessing in the last 20 years in politics, in owners of corporations. What the internet has done is made, you know, a lot of the things that used to happen behind closed doors, the selling out, the compromising. That stuff used to go on behind closed doors. But
Yeah.
now we live in a society, because of social media, because of cell phones, because of whatever, or karma, that stuff is now no longer behind the curtain. You know what I'm saying? The Wizard of Oz, that curtain is permanently pulled clear now. And what we're doing is we have allowed individuals to be able to just skate through without, and it doesn't necessarily just come from that individual's clique or whoever's they hanging out with, but if the president of the United States is corrupt, is the most corrupt person on the planet, why wouldn't the people who are not on everybody's radar try to like do something corrupt, or use that formula? And I think that unfortunately we pick and choose, we pick and choose. And unfortunately for Kanye, I think with his most recent kind of breakdown is that there's no accountability across the board, period.
Now, how do we?
Because he could have said, the music industry is ran by white people, and they don't want women and people of color to get none out of it, and nobody would have had no problems with it.
Nope.
So we have to also understand like the framing and the selective morality and selective outrage that people have. People pick and choose what gets them riled up and what gets them worked up. And
the reason why is because we need a good dog and pony show to keep us distracted.
Right.
Like everyone knew it, and I said it the moment it happened. I told folks even in my circle, I was like, if folks just hush and don't say nothing, it'll go away.
Yeah.
It'll literally go, because this isn't the first time he said some dumb stuff, and we all knew, like, boy, what's wrong with you? But what happened? Folks wanted to get into their feelings, and they wanted to feel that because I now have a voice, I should use it. I remember in physics, my physics class, we were taught that silence is golden, duct tape is silver. Because duct tape fixes everything, it's great.
It is, yeah. But adding to that, I wonder in some way, right there, not to even, I don't like to play alternative advocate in any way, but I wonder there is many people that have followed behind. I don't want to say these are conspiracy theorists, because it's very much the things that Kanye has been spouting, while rooted in hate, there is a nugget of truth to everything, right? There is even a broken clock is right twice a day. And I think that is connecting with someone. And there has been largely, I feel a disconnect in some of the things that he's saying, because it seems to me oftentimes it's without any context, that it's almost like he received some knowledge. He admitted himself he doesn't read books. I don't know who is providing this knowledge to him other than right-wing conspiracists and political commentators, the Keith Boykins and stuff of the world. Why is it? I think it's like the culture's adoration of people who are sort of truth speakers and are taking a bold choice to sort of correct and reprimand maybe those people who they feel have disenfranchised them, and that there's a lot of tension and contingent between the Jewish community and the Black community. And oftentimes, and I often say this very much to most people, my last name is Abner. It's a Hebrew name. I didn't get it on the boat, right? I didn't, that didn't happen. So at some point, there was a period of time, we know how much the Jewish community and the faith has profited off of slave labor. There's a lot of history, almost an eon of history, and where Blackness has been erased from the tribes. There's something there, right, that people are connecting to what Kanye is saying. While it's inflammatory and rooted in hate, there's something that people love about it and connect to. And it's not just what I would assume was the right-wing folks. It's a lot of us, a lot of people who look like us. Why is that?
Well, all that, you can kind of answer your own question, is that we have a lot of trauma that we first got to heal within us. And until we as a people can sit down and first heal ourselves, we can't take on a very complex history that connects us all as human beings. And first and foremost, most folks don't know that all world religions come out of Africa, not just Judaism, Islam, the Tao, Hinduism, everything comes out of Africa. And as we migrated throughout this whole entire world, our quest was to what? Just to explore and live and learn. But given the fact that once we have the whole white supremacy disorder saga, we've never got that healing. Even after Juneteenth, never got healing. So with all this compound interest of trauma upon trauma, anger upon anger, hurt, deception, finally getting that moment of power and a voice versus going to a therapist, what do? We go to the masses. And versus getting education to increase our own mind and understanding, we find our own echo chamber and just continue to blurt into it. And unless we are willing to address that, we can't even handle. Because I ain't gonna lie to you, I am so tired of hearing every black person say that, oh, I'm the original Jew. Not all of us are from that same tribe. Africa is huge, it's massive. So your family could be probably maybe one of the original Christians, probably one of the original, in Hinduism, in Tao. It could be anything. But your faith should not be a weapon to divide anybody. Anyone who's spiritual knows that your spirituality should make you become closer with everyone. It should bring you together. But given that there's so much hurt and pain, hurt people love hurt people.
But then you also have moments in history like the Crusades, where people overtly use religion to divide and conquer and rape and pillage. And so it goes back to like, people trying to get other people to drink their Kool-Aid. And Kanye is going to be able seriously, Kanye ain't
no more Waco.
It's right. Yeah. It's sometimes that Kool-Aid can either, make you break through walls like the Kool-Aid man, or it can have you laying dead with Jim Jones. You know what I'm saying? That's why, again, I'm gonna come back full circle because, unfortunately for Kanye, besides, I understand the mental illness thing. I get that, right? But you have to understand that 9 out of 10 of the times, people who are the most kind of successful, especially black men of color, who they allow to get a certain level of success, it means that the majority of their time, they have been being told what to do. They've had PR people telling them what to talk about or try to tell them what to talk about. They, and speed up now years later, you ask, where do these people get their information from if they don't read? They get them from memes. They're getting them from TikToks. They're getting them from, and so it's not even necessarily like they're getting their own information. And we're now living in a society of like artificial intelligence, like in real time, where actual human beings are artificially only addressing what the intelligence, powers that be, whoever that is, right, is telling them to this is what you should be upset about. This is what you need to care about. This is what you, and so now we're on this kind of like artificial. It's like we're like Terminator. You remember how Terminator, like, as it kept going, the villains or the AKA the robot, they got better and better. They got more human and human life. They didn't get more and more robot life. It was more about how more human can this artificial intelligence, like, that's the only way we can make the machines take over, if we really prove how predictable human beings are. And like the brother said, Donald Trump, he got into office because more people who, quote unquote, were anti-Trump shared his shit. That guy back in the day that passed away, Kevin Samuels, I would have never known nothing about that guy if it wasn't for the people that complained about him. Because I saw more people sharing his material and posting about him that claimed that they didn't like him than I ever saw anybody ever share his stuff. Because most people who agree with him would just be like, oh, I agree with him, and they keep it moving. But they're not. I never seen them propel to the point of where I'm going to share this information to where somebody who might not even would have ever encountered it, you know. And unfortunately,
something I learned in business is that good news will only be spread about 2 to 5 times. A bad review will be spread 9 to 10 times.
Yes.
We love drama. We love bad things.
Absolutely.
But yet, you know, and versus asking questions, doing the research, like, and to kind of bring it down from a macro to micro kind of level and a personal one. Like I said, I'm a hip hop educator, and also this year been teaching a lot more electives in certain schools. And one thing I've been bringing back is essays and reports. And one thing even I learned, that schools are not teaching kids how to do research anymore. In our educational system, kids are not taught how to think. They're not taught how to question. They're not even given homework to help them grow. Instead, all it really is copy, repeat, and regurgitate. And so with that, on a very basic level, then bring it up to a macro level. You said memes. We don't even read the news. All we see is a headline, and that's the basis for our thinking. Versus actually opening up the link, checking the credibility of the source and the site, you know, doing the actual research, and then even before you speak, give it time to marinate. But we want to be so much in the instant of now that before we can like sit back and say, what do we actually think about it? What do I say? We just react.
Yeah.
That reaction.
No one blinked an eye though when he described. I mean, to me, right? Then that means that what Kanye was saying was then rooted in ignorance and a lack of research and counter evidence. There was no scholarly research that this person did. We all knew that was stated. And then when he's saying things, right, there's a filter. You don't, what they say, you don't stand for anything, you fall for anything. Someone has to have a filter to be able to process the tropes that he's been sort of sending out. And so I think it's interesting that we found, or people in the community have found nuggets of things that they can connect to. And then that becomes sort of for them, it excuses the things that he said, because if I can connect to that, and I feel the same way, and I feel disenfranchised, and I don't know what the truth is. And I saw Mozzie made a comment earlier around sort of not being fair to the Jewish community overall, specific families, and absolutely that's true. But there is, Goldman Sachs, there's been banks and entire industries that have been built and profited from the transatlantic slave trade, and have not ever paid $1, have not ever said anything. That we know that, right, those malicious sort of undertones of our banking industry, of our investment industry, of Wall Street, where we were traded as stock and traded as commodities. No one, the New York Stock Exchange has not said, we are going to give you a ticker symbol as a community for the Black race now can be properly traded, or hip hop culture, which has also been, I feel like, the same thing, monetized and commodified, and it's traded, and we just sold it to the highest bidder. Where does the community then kind of come in to start putting a framework around what are we allowing? Why hasn't anyone come through, and where's the academics and the scholars that have said that's not, this is not accurate? Let's as a community address it.
Let me in real quick. Yes. Just raise your hand for me here in this group. How many are you your own problem solver? So if there's a problem that's coming up for you where you thought you could rely on your friends or your community to help you solve it, but they couldn't, that you had to take care of it yourself. Has that been you?
Yeah. I mean,
your own problem solver. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So another take with ignorant statements and stuff that I think I want to kind of dive into a little bit is that how many times do you think that with Kanye creating very unhinged, ignorant statements has come from him trying to fend for himself because his immediate friends couldn't really help him or his family couldn't help him. He was the one helping others.
Yeah.
Where he might have been in the position to be the provider. I know it's kind of sounding like advocate for Kanye, but on the real, like, I feel like a lot of the times with being that person in that position where because you become successful and then you've had to give back because you're probably surrounded by folks who are not as successful as you, that you've had to solve problems. And so with years and years of accumulating that, I think that he probably feels like anything that may come out of his mouth is the right thing because he had to been navigating a lot of his successes initially and strategically alone. And I would really like to hear from Pat or Chakra if possible.
Remember
go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So actually, Chakra first.
I mean, yeah, I totally understand what you're saying, because as a, one of those successful entertainers, they are a company unto themselves. They're a business, right? They have hundreds of people depending on them, right, for their livelihood. So that will make you feel like you're holding this mantle of leadership or just, or whatever, to, and it will it will make you feel like you can also offer advice, counsel, and such to people, even when you're not qualified. And if you're already healing or trying to heal or traumatized by things that are happening to you, and you're just struggling, internally, who knows what the hell you're going to say? And that's, I think a lot of that is what we're seeing as well. I mean, mental health or bad behavior has never been exclusive to the mentally ill.
Yeah, I was gonna say real quick also. Yeah, I mean, if you're in a position that you're, again, making things happen for others or just making things happen, people see progress. Even if I know better than you, would I be, comfortable enough to even give you advice on something or even say like, hey man, don't do that. If I see you actually making certain moves, then other people will feel inadequate to even step up to be able to correct you or check you or say anything. Because if I do, what if you cut me out? Yeah. You get banned from the crew, so there's that part of it also.
Yeah.
Having been somebody who's constantly on the black sheep list, I've had to grow to learn that you can't be afraid of being alone. That, if anything, is what defines anyone for both success and leadership. You have to be willing to stand upon truth and be okay with going against the flow. If you're always worried about being liked, in psychology, they call that what? People pleasing, right? And sadly, within our industry of art, we want to be people pleased. We can't please everybody. And the best artists understand that. And so what made Kanye so alluring at first was that he's like the rogue. He's like the underdog. He's wilding the heck out. I would have never done that. That's so cool. But at the same time, when his inner counsel, and Netflix did a great documentary about it, his friend did, when they try to come beside him to talk to him, because of now the clout, the praise, the accolades, the power, he can now, no, I don't want to hear none of that. I don't want to listen to you if you're trying to give me any sort of rhyme or reason. You know what I mean? So that's where now, if somebody pushes away their wise counsel, if somebody refuses to hear wisdom, then we gotta let that person be held accountable for the fact that no, you can't say no one didn't try to talk to you. You can't say we as a community didn't try to pull you aside and deal with you. You wanted to double down on this. And that's where now I gotta wipe my hands of you. And I gotta give it up to two drink champs, because when they dropped that episode and when they realized like, yo, wait a minute, this is too wild. And then they pulled it because they knew that, you know what? Even though we do believe in freedom of speech, what he said was cross the line. We can't get down one like that.
But here's my my thing, yo. There's tons of music that's being made in real time right now that's talking about kill black people, give drugs to black people, rape black women. That's out here, yo. Like that's out. That people are literally in real time winning awards for, and People's Choice Awards for, and all that, and no one seems to have this same ability to critique or have this critical view on it. Like it's,
I wouldn't say I wouldn't say they don't have the ability to. They have the ability to. It's just that, do I want to fuck up the money? That's the problem. Do I want to fuck up my money?
I'm talking about the consumer. I'm talking about all these people who are outraged by Kanye.
Even with the consumer.
Because I have a theory. I have a real theory with Kanye. I have a theory that Kanye hit a ceiling in terms of his career. It's kind of similar to Will Smith. I think these guys hit ceilings in their careers, and they got to a point where it was like, damn, like what is my drive at this point? Like, and so because of social media and all this other stuff, they got exposed to like seeing all these other people in real time being relevant who are 50 times less famous or rich or wealthy than them. They're seeing less talented artists out here making these records. They're seeing them. They're coming from the perspective of fatherhood now, where they're seeing the examples of art that's influencing their kids. Maybe their kids, they're not their favorite. I deal with that as a father sometimes, where I know that my son, I'm not his favorite artist. So how do you come to that dilemma? But more specifically, I think sometimes I tell people all the time, unfortunately for black men in America, the only two options, especially in the entertainment world, the only way you really get the love is either self-sabotage or selling out.
Yep. Because
it's either the fame or the infamy that somehow people have some comfort zone with it. And I feel like, I feel like Kanye is trolling everybody. I feel like the majority of it really is trolling, because that's the society we live in. We saw Trump do it. We saw Trump make fun of physically and mentally challenged people. But he's trolling. You understand what I'm saying? Like, we live in D.C. I never forget the first time I saw two people I saw 2 hours before arguing on CNN, and then to walk into a restaurant and see them drinking martinis together at a bar. My head almost exploded, because it made me really realize, like, this is really like, theater. Yeah, you know what I'm saying, that we're seeing. And so I think a lot of it, unfortunately for Kanye, has become trolling, because like the sister V said, he may not be trying to like be there might be a lack of accountability, and he might be kind of like, not having people in his corner or people around him that kind of talk him down. But I think he's trolling people. That's the culture we live in. We see it on Facebook. We see it on we see comments. I troll people sometimes too, because I realize like that's sometimes is how you get the reaction, or you get people.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. I know that you're saying trolling, and I really appreciate it, because I am an internet troll too. But I think there's a level of trolling of like how much it moves men like Kanye, men who aspire to be like Kanye. It's the same thing with like saying Trump is trolling. It moves men like Trump, men who support Trump. And I'm saying men specifically because, don't get me wrong, I know that there's women out there that are enabling this. I think about the implication of what kind of harm is thrown into the community, what kind of harm has been influenced in the community. Like, we saw the insurrection on January 6th. We all saw that. Yeah,
but it wasn't no black man that made that happen. I'm trying to tell you, if black people can't get organized, there's not a black man in this planet that has that much influence or impact on people in the planet. And I'm saying, I think people are giving Kanye the very thing that I said is what created this monster. We are now still feeding the very thing that created this monster by making him more relevant and more like he's this leader. He's not this leader. People are not Black folks are not following this guy. He's not having now. If you're talking about Nazis, I guess again, that's just something I saw in the news, and we've already been told that everything that's reported to us is not necessarily always facts. So it's kind of like that again. I just think that I don't think anything Kanye is saying is literally, because 6 months ago we were saying the same thing about Dave Chappelle. We claimed that Dave Chappelle was this like source of all this pain that's now occurring all over America because he made a couple of jokes about very different specific groups of people. And so I'm saying that this to me again is, and again, I'm not no super Kanye fan, but I'm an artist and I'm a black male who's a father, and I know that he's probably more than anything he's acting out because he knows that he's not in the home with his children anymore. Mm-hmm. So his influence is no more a factor. He went through that. He knew what it was like to be told one perspective of his life, even though his kids can see him and we see him. He's Kanye, yeah, but when a person's in a home and they're in the confinement of their home, you have no control over what's going on or what's the influences in the example. So he's acting out in that sense. That's something that there's millions of men that go through that. That's more of I think a more relatable influence that he has on society than the things that he's saying about isolated groups of people. He's just showing what happens when a person feels like they're, especially more specifically a black person, a black male, when they feel underheard, underappreciated, misunderstood, marginalized, all these things. And now we're just seeing him act out because he has the platform. But the same, even he's not even the first black artist to celebrate Hitler. Like Erykah Badu tweeted about things about Hitler before, and such and such. And so and so my thing is like, if we're gonna really if that's the issue, then you need to call out those people as well. But the idea to really think that Kanye West is that powerful, I don't know. I can't really necessarily sit here and agree with that. Excuse me for cutting you off, but I just don't. The world I live in, the industry I live in, I don't see. I don't see Kanye. I don't see Kanye celebrated the way that consumers think. It's weird to me. I don't know. I don't think he has that.
Hop into what that context added in there around. There was a lot of things around parental responsibility or lack thereof, and talk about, because you had a comment that you were going with that I'm interested in hearing a little bit more netted out.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine, because I did step in to try to push back a little bit on the trolling aspect, and that's something that I feel like is really sensitive online. Sure, Kanye is not responsible for raising nobody's kids. We're going to put that out there. I know your favorite celebrities are not out there to raise nobody's kids. I got that. But artists do pick up influence from other artists, and they will find the things that appeal to them the most that they identify with. Trolling online for me, and again, I do appreciate your context, Wes, first and foremost, but what I don't appreciate is that saying something as a troll to be funny online to get engagement has put people in danger. And that's the thing that I want to make very clear. It puts people in danger. Kanye is at a level where he has protection. He has the money to have that protection. Other people who want to try to look in the mirror and somewhat parallel Kanye don't have that same protection. And so that's why I get a little bit heated when I hear that celebrities are just trolling. We're all a group of Black people here on this panel. We don't have the same protection or privilege as Kanye if we were to try to replicate anything that he does. even if we're trying to feel bold, that risks jobs. If we're trying to say something ignorant and then realize, and we're just going with it, we don't have the space from that. We have the space to at least take a second to like reflect on what's going on in our heads and being like, okay, we said an ignorant statement. Maybe I can go back and try to apologize for it, whatever that form of the apology may look like. But sometimes you can't take back those repercussions that you've received. And people are also not willing to forgive folks who are not as, quote unquote, I'll say like here, as powerful as Kanye, if there's people who are forgiving folks like him. So that's where I got a little bit like sensitive about that, because we saw what COVID was like. We saw the implication of people like not of going by COVID protocol guidance safety, and how the world became further divided. And we saw how people were starting to spout into the social media universe and how that left us very divided. And we also saw like the amount of people who possibly have lost their jobs because of the things that they have said online. So that's just something that I just kind of want to put out there and just say, like, we can't simply just call it trolling when it's influence that could be dangerous. And so that's where I'm kind of coming from with that.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think it says more about social media. That's just the age of social media and people having phones where you can, connect to the internet and just kind of do whatever and say whatever. And it's just a different time, different technology. So, I mean, it's not so much Kanye or anybody actually having influence than just kids or younger people having that access. Like if we had it in the 90s, we would probably doing the same thing.
Yeah, I'm saying it's just a weapon. It's just a weapon of choice. You know what I'm saying? Like
that's all it is.
That's the tool that's being used, and he's not the only person on the planet that actually who's using this tool for evil. If we want to, if the conversation is about good versus evil, we definitely he's not the only person that's doing that, and he's not the only artist. And more specifically, black artists who said some wild things about Hitler before. But I just think because maybe that artist wasn't on everybody's shit list, they let that artist get a pass. You understand what I'm saying? Like, and that's where I'm saying I think selective morality and selective outrage is more of a threat than any of these celebrities or anybody who's making comments or public statements. It's actually the people that really are the contributors to this, because we decide what's important. Other people outside of our community look at what we react and respond to and how we react and respond to it. And that's usually their gauge of like, oh, they ain't tripping, or, oh, well, next time we running for office, say this, or the next time I'm doing this, say this, because then we can cater to them, not just that one individual, because it's, I mean, I don't know, I got isolated. I literally got blacklisted. I literally had shows canceled. I literally lost money. The whole projectile of my career was affected because of a song I made about Kanye. And at that time, everyone acted as if I celebrated Hitler by questioning Kanye's intentions back in 2004 and 5. So I'm just saying that I know from firsthand that it's really has nothing to do really as much about the artists and these people as we want to believe, but rather more of the people. It's the same thing with schools. It ain't Deion Sanders that can help that school. It's the alumni. If you understand, if you graduate from a school and you become successful and then you don't acknowledge the school or give anything to the school, you're just that's why the school struggles. It's not because of one individual or one entity. And I'm just saying that the more people kind of focus on these individuals and these celebrities versus how they can actually contribute to society on a mass level, we're always going to be limited to the mob mentality, and what I call selective morality. There's people out here, we basically out here fighting over who's been hurt the worst.
Yep.
Oppression Olympics.
That's what's going right now.
We're in a constant state of oppression Olympics. But let me ask you this, because I know we have gone through the process of evaluating what has happened, but how do we fix it? Where's the folks that come in? Because you're right, Wes. Candace Owens has spewed that around people have celebrated Hitler's economic system for years. She's not the first African American person to say something either. We've talked about the artists who also celebrated or said something about Hitler, but where does the collective sort of consciousness come in to inform now and provide, counter evidence again in some scholarly way to say, hey, I actually read books and this is not factual. We don't have Black fact checkers out there, in spite of our Black scholarship that's gotten on TV and platforms, right? I mean, who do we go to to be our morality checker or to be the fact checker for the Black collective? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think that's a dangerous. Just real quick. That's a dangerous place to be, because I think that let's say that some of the speakers or individuals that get chosen to speak on the topic actually side. Some of the historical facts actually side with what is being said. That's a tricky dance. So I think a lot of people would steer clear of that. Just real quick, what Cat Williams went through when he spoke about certain things, and we saw how that played out. And so I think people try to avoid that at all costs.
Yes. Well, I like that. It ain't Van Jones for damn sure. But who is it? I feel like one of the things that I kept missing with people as they were talking about Deion Sanders, I kept trying to frame for people. Do you understand the catalyst for this was that at the end, there's a result here that no one out of the HBCU enterprise was drafted in 2 years in the draft. There is a condition that created Deion Sanders' structural system before him acting as an individual. Like he's trying to repair. He probably is able to do a lot more in terms of building a pipeline for Black athletics in this PWI than he has been able to do at the HBCU. It's sort of like that kept getting missed. Well, there was a stimuli to him leaving beyond just an individual aspect. There was a collective structural thing that was happening. Why are people not drafting from Grambling anymore? Why are people not paying attention to Tennessee or any of the other HBCUs or HSIs or tribal colleges? When have we ever seen an athlete that's coming out this first in the draft? Look at Caleb Williams. We just seen, who is from DC, went to Gonzaga. He didn't go to a public school in Washington, DC. When we're celebrating that Heisman Trophy like we all want it here in DC at least, we're putting a lot of effort and a lot of support in the structural system that pushes us out, and the narrative does not contain us. Who is there to educate and put, sensibility back into it? Who's responsible? Is it people? Because is Kanye going to listen to, folks when Wes is saying, hey, I tried, but look at what happened to me. So what, if it was me, I'm going to use Wes's example. No, thank you. I don't want my trajectory to be limited because, where is who is responsible and how do we make this not happen again?
If I can, I'll go first. I'll keep it short. This is my last statement because I want to give folks, an opportunity to, as I know we're over our time. But answer your question, to first kind of give a foundation, people have to first understand the psychology of a man-child. And the reason why I say that is because I love this one philosopher and thinker, Paul Chek. He gave a wonderful lecture, look it up. It's called Why Do Kings Kill Children? And in every culture, there's an understanding for human development. The child, the warrior, the king, and the elder. When all that gets removed and all you have is just kings and children, that warrior side is when we kind of begin to do all that introspective, work, kind of go out, find ourselves, find our past, so we can have our dynasty, grow older, and then become the elders for the young. Once that's removed, what we have is people who grow up who may obtain all this wealth and success, but they've never had a chance to mentally develop and become the warrior, to become the king. They're just getting put in places of power with no true knowing how to hold that weight. I give that as the grounding for now when we look at this situation of trolling, selective morality, all this stuff, and when artists lash out, they're not talking as men and women. They're not talking as adults and leaders. They're children with money. And they're in their 40s and 50s and 60s or whatever. And they're kept that way, and because they haven't grown up, their fans don't grow up. So you have basically a bunch of kids inside of a playpen yelling and screaming at each other.
Yep.
Like I see it all day whenever like I go into the schools. No difference between the playground and social media. Literally. So once you grasp that, where do we come in to change it? Is that those who know, it is our job to teach those who don't know. And I love the philosophy of Uncle Ira, which is kind of what I use with my students, is you got to be patient. You're going to have a lot of these Prince Zuko's out here, hot-headed, rah, and you got to be one to work with them. Now, you can't reach all of them. And this is where I revert back to what I love what Frederick Douglass said. And I agree with this 100%. Let folks fall on their ass. I support letting Black folks fall on their ass. It doesn't mean I don't care, I don't love you. Because I love you, I let you hit rock bottom, because when you hit rock bottom, you're like, I need help. I'll help you out. Here's what you can do better. But as long as we keep trying to spare the rod, what have we done? We spoiled these doggone kids. We spoiled these adults. We never let them sit in timeout. You know, so their inner child is still crying, but we've never given it healing. So the only way we can heal others, and if you want to be on that side of helping your community, it first starts with you. And I'll tell anyone, before you can get into any organization, whether it's hip-hop education, therapy, even art, go heal yourself, please. Because broken people cannot fix broken people. You cannot help me. I don't care how much money you have. If I can look underneath the hood and realize you're a piece of shit, and I see a lot of folks who have money who are horrible people inside, I'm good. I'll be by myself. Because nowadays, people are open and want the knowledge. They're just tired of being lied to. They're tired of dealing with the shapeshifters and con artists. They're tired of us with the morality. They want genuine people who have gone through the process, come at the other end thriving, and can actually teach them how to stand on their own 2 feet. And I believe that as we finally come to that, then we'll see the change. But it won't be overnight, and it may not be within our lifetime. This is a long-term thing. And if we could think like that and be prepared for that, maybe next generation, after that, we'll then see the change. But for now, we got to just get started on just healing ourselves, first and foremost. Because if we don't heal us...
Let me ask you, Daryl, while you're saying that, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but how long?
I'm done.
You know, I joke with my dad all the time, and my father says, I used to pontificate this shit before you were born in utero, and you're going to pontificate it, and your son will pontificate it. And when are we going to stop sort of passing the buck to say, when do we start like we keep talking about it? When is someone going to do something? We keep sort of planning. When is the plan actually, the strategic plan has not been operationalized in over 500 years. When do we stop waiting for somebody else to come and put a structure around it? What happens next from here?
Well, to answer that question and to like slightly brag, yeah. My new album comes out next year. But no, like so when the pandemic happened, and I'm grateful actually for the pandemic, and this is why I say I'm grateful for it. It made me have to look at myself in the mirror.
Yes.
I had to realize up until 2020, I was living in the white supremacy disorder. I was chasing the bag. I was trying to emulate Black wealth according to what I see on social media, not realizing that the fact that I can do whatever the hell I want, my ancestors are beyond proud of me. The fact that I get to vote and I own my own stuff. I've done more than any other my ancestors have ever done. I've done enough. Everything else from here is just cherry on the cake. Once I grasp how simple success really is, then I can finally unpack, well, then why am I working so hard? Why do I feel that? I love what V said, the fear of missing out. Why I feel like I'm not being involved in stuff. It's because of my ego, my woundedness, my inner child. You know what I mean? My struggles on the line. Whatever you want to say with that, I was fucked up. And I had to sit down and deal with me. Then I got into therapy. and had a really good dope black therapist who I love to this day and a healer. And she helped me unpack a lot of things. And then I had to sit with myself and really like, okay, how am I reacting to this? What am I really doing to this? Hearing from friends and folks tell me when I'm out of line, going back with that and really insisting, okay, am I actually out of line or are they projecting? And then having the conversations about it, allowing the nuances of that. And all that then led to me finally, when we did follow up in California, and I was just doing my after school music stuff, I saw that the kids were way far behind. They weren't succeeding. So you know what I did? I put my music and my career on the back burner, and I sat down in these classes with these kids and worked on their math homework, worked on their reading homework. I wasn't afraid to say, you know what? Me being in my community doesn't take away from me being an artist. And not everyone can do that. And I cannot force everyone to do it. But if you're going to say or be like, well, where does the change starts? I was like, you know what? I can't look to everyone else. What am I going to do? So I started doing it. I started getting involved with Today's Future Sound a lot more, working with, which is one great organization that's worldwide, working with kids in beat making and even in the juvenile correction system. Working with Fam First out there in Oakland, working with kids, as a youth center, working with some college preps out in Richmond. I made it my job to be active in my community. So
that's what I was about to say. Yeah.
So that's what it takes. You have to be willing to be active in your community.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's just working with, your child or just the kids in your block, if you can't mentor them as an artist, how do you hold and portray yourself? How do you go out on these interviews? What music are you making? You know what I mean? Looking in just even underneath the eventual hood, who are you banking with? If we have control, like I said early on with the whole like Pope and the limo driver, if you know who's driving your vehicle all the way through, what's going on in your community, knowing who your local officials are.
Yep.
That's being involved. That's karma. Because then you can't be like, oh, I don't know who what. You're not involved.
But
you're not engaged.
Jesus can't fix this because let me ask
He can't fix it.
Sometimes it's who you pray to. There is a reality of that too. There's a lot of blind action.
I'm not a Christian, but Jesus did say he left us a comforter. I'm just saying.
Yeah. I'm being certainly sarcastic and sardonic in many ways, but sometimes, right? People think Kanye said Jesus can fix everything and has been leading out with Jesus. To me, sometimes I feel like there's become a cloth on things. I know we have gone over, and I want to give an opportunity for people to have sort of closing thoughts, but I feel so when we talk about the accountability that gets extended, how do you, hold your own buddies accountable, your own families accountable? There's a lot of bad actors in our community, in every community. And how do you hold them accountable? And what do you say to them and educate them? And, I'm a single mother, I am single, meaning I am the only mother, the only parent. Where's the accountability there? There is no one steps into, I have to put a framework around that. No one says, oh, this is a bad actor in the community. So what do you do and how do you police that is it my responsibility? I have a difficult enough time just taking care of raising a Black man, which is impossible for me to do by myself. I have to have the efforts of my own father to be a voice in a space and my friends in my community to be that. So where do I have the time is where I'm asking, I guess. If it was just me and a person.
Well, the thing is, there are actually real people in our communities who are doing this work. But because we put so much priority and expectation on celebrities and these preachers and politicians, people who are on the surface are supposed to quote unquote be the problem solvers. There are people who actually are going into schools, who are people who are on who formulate these crews of individuals within the community who you can call them up and they might know a specific gang member or something, and they get a word, hey, yo, such and such is about to go do such and such to such and such, and they get the phone call first, and then they go pull up, and they be right there when so-and-so is pulling up to go do a crime and be like, yo, look, this ain't gonna happen. You understand what I'm saying?
Mhm.
That's really what it is. It's more of kind of like you really have to go into it. I've been teaching for Ford's Theater for like the last 10 years, and I have the blessing to be able to go into a wide range of communities where from the charter school to the school in Southeast to the schools uptown that are pristine, and I see the impact. I can tell that these young people don't have regular artists, poets, writers that are within their community literally coming in and spending time with them, showing them that there are all types of professionals out here, showing them that there are all types of paths or journeys that you can take, in terms of your individual life. But as if the grown-ups are continuing to celebrate and look outside of their homes for their heroes, the young people are just going to follow, and they're just imitating us. And that's why I'm saying the accountability is really not on the artist part. The accountability comes on us as the individuals that are actually in the communities and actually have the children who are being impacted by this stuff. And that's like my closing note. I agree with the brother like 100%. You got to find the way that you can actually contribute to change. If it's one child, if it's two children, if it's a classroom of 30, if you can save, I learned, if you can save 5 out of a classroom of 20 something, that's beyond great. You know what I'm saying? You want to hope that you can get one. And so I think a lot of times, because we have given the power to, celebrities, or if it doesn't come in a certain package, we question even our capabilities of being able to impact. And volunteering don't cost nothing. There's tons of programs where they have they want artists to come into certain environments to impact children, not just on an academic level, but on creative levels, on therapeutic levels. But if we want to see the change, this may sound cliche, but we got to be the change that we want. You know what I'm saying? We want to see. That's really what it is, yo.
Yep.
I love that. I love exponential power, and that's something that has been key to me. I work in philanthropy. You don't have to be an income earner of over $100,000 to give back a dollar. A dollar sharing can save a lot, right? So I want to give opportunity for everybody else to have closing remarks. Thank you so much, Dee and Wes, for those. Who wants to go next? Patrick, it looks like you had something.
Okay. WBL has a show called No New Leaders, right? And that's the mind frame that I'm in right now. History has shown us that we are all fallible. So we don't need to be following anybody, anybody. Kanye's going to fade away. He will, one way or another. It's going to happen. It's important that we continue on, I think, in the tradition of the village, and circle around each other, hold each other close, hold each other accountable. I know it's hard to do nowadays. Some of us barely know our neighbors and all that stuff, but we need to get back to that. And stop looking to people who revel in ignorance. We have plenty of thought leaders who are doing wonderful things right here in this panel. We have wonderful folks who are speaking out against all the isms, and appealing to the best in us. And those are the folks who I really want to hold up.
Yes, absolutely. V, it looks like you said you had one last remark. Please do share it.
I really love the educational approach that I've been hearing from this panel. Like, I'm 100% about education. I used to be an after-school music teacher, general music teacher, as well as the site coordinator for a program with San Jose Jazz Festival. I loved that program. However, as much as I wanted to stay at that program, it was not sustainable for me. So we've got to think about how are we nourishing the educators in the system, and what can we do as people to make sure that policies are put in place to keep those teachers in these spaces to influence good for our children in the future, essentially. So here's a take, and this is me sort of putting a little bit of a promo with my job a bit. Board service is really important, especially if you're on a board with a major foundation, and there's major foundations that are local to you. Foundations fundraise money, and they will give money to different nonprofits who are doing the work to do after school programs for your kids, to have people like ourselves to come in as guests and to shed gems. If you are a board member with a foundation where you can help, like, be part of the team, the committee who is looking at these applications to see where the money goes, I highly recommend being part of those foundations. It's one of those things that you just got to make sure that have a little bit of nonprofit experience. CEN does that, where you can come in, do some board training. And then after you get that board training, you got the tools that you need to see yourself in these spaces. And these spaces need people like us. They need people of color like us to be in these spaces, to be the voice in the room, not as a token, but to be the voice in the room. So I highly recommend that. Because like, as much as I value education, I know that there are a lot of burnt out teachers, and there's a lot of teachers who are dropping out from their jobs because they can't find something that's sustainable for them. I know in the Bay Area specifically, that there are teachers who are looking for different jobs because they can't afford their houses. They don't want to live with roommates anymore. They want to live the dream that they've seen other teachers live before them, with having a sustainable life, and yet they can't have that. And so I think it does start. That's one way to kind of help start with your volunteer work and being impactful. So that's my take.
Yes. Thank you so much for that. I think just to kind of say, this platform is, obviously everyone knows, is on Words, Beats, and Life, which is doing sort of using the transformative power of hip hop culture to do that, to empower young artists and put them on pathways for positive change. And so this is, conversations like this continue to amplify programs that are doing this work every day. So I absolutely hope that people will continue, like WBL, come subscribe, get involved. This is a community that really is sort of led by community. So, and I cut you off, Juma, because it looks like you were about to say something, closing remarks too.
No, I mean, I was just going to say that I do appreciate Ellington's take on community, and it definitely, I was going to chime in and say, definitely say the same thing, that it definitely is based on strongly building community and, providing resources, for individuals to do what they need to do, and also provide resources for younger people. And I would just like to say that definitely presence is important, because I have my youngest son is 16 now, and pretty much I was like a stay-at-home dad, and raising him, and just from him being around me while I'm working on music and stuff like that, I saw like the impact of that influence and what he picked up on, even if it wasn't directly me telling him do this and do that, and just seeing the importance of that. And so definitely, if we can have people go into the school system and just be present, that's very important.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
All great advice. And I feel like actionable things that we can do, which I loved with Wes starting that train of like, here's something that people are doing every day. And so I'm sorry I had to play a little bit of just kind of saying, what do I do? I'm just one person. And obviously I do connect with everything that has been stated here. And I want to thank you all for your time and for going over that time and really sort of surfacing, I think, which is a deeper conversation than Ye. As we know, this will continue to happen with others. It has not started with him or will end with him, but I think what we surfaced today was really great discourse on how we put a framework around it and what we do from here as a community to ensure that this does not become, sort of our trajectory going forward. So thank you again for joining. If you saw this show, please definitely do follow all of our guests. Their Instagram handles were in the show. You can also visit WBL, subscribe to the YouTube channel, You'll get more content like this. We reference the show No New Leaders, which runs on Sunday at 4:15 to 5:15 p.m. Eastern every week. So definitely thank you again so much. And thank you to RBI for being our generous producer and putting this show together for us today. So I appreciate having you all, and thank you for letting me pick your brains and sort of have surface this conversation. It's really been a pleasure.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.